Hey everybody, today I'm in Indianapolis and I'm in a super popular area, although it has I'd say a little bit of misinformation about exactly where it is and what it is in Indianapolis, but it's very close to Broad Ripple Village. In fact, I'm on the Monon Trail right now, and just behind me is a really popular restaurant that's kind of a mainstay in Indianapolis, and I'm crossing the street right now. I'm actually crossing 54th, but it's Mama Corolla's. And this little area is pretty neat. It's got all kinds of little tiny restaurants and little shops, but I am near Broad Ripple. But is this Broad Ripple? That's what we're gonna talk about here today. We're gonna get into South Broad Ripple and what that's like, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time to the channel and you wanna know everything there is to know about living in Indianapolis or living in Broad Ripple or someplace near that or any place that surrounds Indianapolis, then don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button, tap the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. And we get reach outs from people all over the country with questions about Indianapolis, the neighborhoods in Indianapolis, and of course the cities and towns that surround Indianapolis as well. So if you have questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back whenever it comes time for you to make your move to Indianapolis. So I'm walking along the Monon Trail right now, and I'm really truly south of Broad Ripple. I'm certainly south of Broad Ripple Village, but Broad Ripple proper, the actual borders for Broad Ripple, if you get to the furthest point to the north, you're gonna run into the White River. And the White River has this U-shaped bend that's pretty sharp actually, right at the north side of it. And so you kind of have a west side of it and you have an east side of it, and on the west side there's College Avenue that borders it, and that's kind of tucked in that corner there is where Broad Ripple Village is, right around Broad Ripple Avenue, which is 62nd Street. So that's kind of Broad Ripple that a lot of people, some cyclists coming up here, want to make sure they're out of their way. That's the Broad Ripple that people think of whenever they think Broad Ripple. But of course it's also a big neighborhood other than just a place to go, a cultural district for people that live in Indianapolis and the whole surrounding area, any of the towns and the cities that surround it. But on the south end is KESSLER Boulevard, and then over on the east is Keystone. So when you kind of the northeast side of the White River, you can get into some less expensive homes, and there's a few certainly more expensive parts to that section of Broad Ripple, but you can get into some older homes and some rougher parts of Broad Ripple, and actually some of the homes there are relatively inexpensive. But then once you get down here towards KESSLER, and in fact I'm walking north on the Monon Trail, 54th Street's behind me, I'm walking up towards KESSLER Boulevard, which is actually still a little ways up to the north of me, but that's truly that southern border of Broad Ripple. And so once you cross KESSLER, then you're pretty much in there. Just on the south side of KESSLER Boulevard is where you can though find some incredibly nice neighborhoods like Forest Hills and Canterbury. I mean, these are some places that have some incredible homes, beautiful streets, enormous trees, very established, some of the coolest architecture in homes. Some of them aren't gigantic homes. You have some smaller ones and you do have some larger ones, and some that have been super heavily renovated and just very well taken care of, and maybe a few that not as much, might need a little bit of repair, but the home is still super cool and super unique. You're not gonna find anything cookie cutter in any of those neighborhoods. And when you see people looking for homes in that particular area, they'll think that's Broad Ripple. And it's technically not Broad Ripple when you get south of KESSLER. In fact, I'm gonna actually turn around here and head back the other direction, as there's a lot of traffic going a little bit north of me here, and I don't wanna get run over. So when you get south of KESSLER, you can still consider it Broad Ripple, and a lot of people call it SoBro, so South Broad Ripple. And it's a little bit of a mishmash. There's a super popular neighborhood just off to the south and the west of where I am, and that's MERIDIAN KESSLER. And there are a lot of, just incredibly good restaurants technically in MERIDIAN KESSLER. There's a few of the best restaurants in Indianapolis right in that area, and there's a few of the best restaurants right here in Broad Ripple too. But some of those restaurants, people will go there and they'll think, I'm in Broad Ripple, but technically you're in MERIDIAN KESSLER, or you're not in either one of them. And it's just you're kind of south of this particular area, and south of KESSLER, south of Broad Ripple proper. So people just kind of call it, at least a lot of people do, SoBro, South Broad Ripple. And it's just kind of stuck, even though there isn't really a defined border for it. And I would say Sobro probably goes pretty far south of here. You know, even you could probably say it goes down to 38th Street and where the state fairgrounds are, south of where I'm walking right now. The Monon Trail, it would take you right down to the state fairgrounds. And you know, if you were going to the state fair in August or something like that, lots of people walk, they ride their bike, and go during those couple of weeks using the Monon. Pretty easy to do. Now, when you're talking about homes and living in Broad Ripple, of course, Broad Ripple Village, that's the place where you've got lots of shops, lots of restaurants, nightlife, and it's a super cool place, a destination place that people live all over Indianapolis. They go to Broad Ripple Village for a lot of different reasons, for the culture, for the restaurants, the shops, just like you said. But living there is a little bit more difficult, where you could just walk right out your door and you're in Broad Ripple Village, unless you want to get into kind of a super old, really tiny for the most part, maybe 2-bed, 1-bath bungalow that might need a lot of work right there in the village. Or you could be in a townhome or condo, something like that, that was built more recently for sure, but of course they're going to be a little bit smaller too. Surprisingly, they're not terribly expensive for the most part. You can get in there $300 or a little more than that, and in some cases maybe a little bit under that. But you're not going to get as much as you would, of course, in some of the other neighborhoods that surround Indianapolis and some of the cities that surround Indianapolis. But as you get a little bit south towards KESSLER, then that's where you can start getting into the fact that you've just got a lot more options. So you've got a lot more neighborhoods in the traditional sense, where it's just single family home after single family home with streets and sidewalks, and some really exceptionally cool ones for the most part. So once you get to KESSLER though, and I'm back to 54th Street here, I'm gonna cross it one more time. Make sure that, there we go, waiting for me thankfully. Once you get to KESSLER Boulevard and cross that, you're kind of technically out of it. But once you cross that threshold, the homes and the price kind of jumps up a little bit. And then as you get further south, there's more and more and more homes and neighborhoods. But as you get further south, it starts to get into that area, like we said, that you're kind of not in Broad Ripple anymore, you're in Sobro. So you could say that it's Broad Ripple, but it's not technically Broad Ripple. And some people want to be in there, and of course they want to be in Broad Ripple, and they're looking for an opportunity or a relatively inexpensive way to do that. And once you get into this area right here, where it is kind of Sobro and a little further south, you can do that. But you're gonna get a home that could be on a slightly rougher street. Some streets are a little bit nicer than others, some are a little bit less nice. And then of course the homes are kind of a mishmash in there as well. They can vary in prices tremendously. You can get in south of here, 200,000, maybe a little less even, maybe a little bit more. And then of course, sometimes a lot more than that. It's just a matter of how much work has been put into that home. But as you get further south of here, it does, at least the homes, get a little bit rougher in general. So when you're looking for a place in Broad Ripple and you want to be, I'd say, in a popular place, a place that has, you know, like Mama Corola's right here, just off to my left, kind of that mainstay really in this particular area, the MERIDIAN, KESSLER, Broad Ripple area. You have to kind of stay a little bit further north to get into the more established Broad Ripple. And so the further south you go, it's a little bit more difficult to say, yeah, you're in Broad Ripple. Further north you go, it's a lot easier to certainly say that, because you just technically are closer. Once you get down here towards 54th Street, and a little bit further south, when you're talking about walking to the village or walking to a lot of these restaurants or biking or something like that, then of course you're further as well. So they're the aspects that makes it a little bit more difficult to say that you truly live in Broad Ripple. Because if you live in Broad Ripple, then there's that idea that you can walk to a lot of what it has to offer, or you can at least bike using something like the Monon here, or some of the sidewalks on your street, or just some of your streets, period, even if they don't have sidewalks, to get to where you're going. So as I get off 54th Street onto one of those streets that's in that general vicinity, it can be a little bit hit and miss. There's some homes in here that are really, really super cool. They've obviously had some work done. They've obviously been taken care of, and then some others that haven't so much. And then as you get further south of here, south of 54th Street, it starts to get a little bit spottier as far as how well cared for some of those properties really are. But still, you can find some that are in very, very good shape. you're just a little further from what we call Broad Ripple proper, the actual definition of Broad Ripple for sure. Now, if you're looking for a place in the city that is really close to a lot of what's happening culturally, restaurants, shops, this is definitely a place that would certainly fulfill any of those desires. But of course, just like in a lot of places, if you want to get very, very close to all of that, you're going to have to pay a little bit more and likely get a little bit less. If you get down into an area like this is still relatively close, and you might get a little less expensive place, and of course still not getting a tremendously large place and not a lot of square footage, or maybe not a basement, maybe not even 4 bedrooms or something like that. It might be down to 2 or 1. And 1 bathroom, that is. You might be able to find a 1-bedroom home in here somewhere, but that's going to be pretty rare. You're going to have at least 2 for the most part, so we'll call them all bungalows. But you'll have maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to break in a place like this and still remain relatively close. So if you have questions about Broad Ripple, Southern Broad Ripple, Northern Broad Ripple, Broad Ripple Village, Indianapolis, any of the places surrounding here, Indianapolis in general, then don't hesitate to reach out. And until the next one, we'll see you later.